and specific as possible while they're talking, just because of the initial awkwardness of this technology, since it's the first time we're doing this for an overseers meeting. Some of you have done this before, some of you haven't, but there's a lot of voices around the table. We don't usually have 7 overseers interacting necessarily in recent months. When the public has an opportunity to speak, and there are opportunities again at the beginning and end of the meeting, I'm asking if the public can keep their comments to 3 minutes long. Why am I doing that? We don't usually do that. I'm doing that because, again, of the technology, and I just want to make sure that we're able to stay on top of things and move quickly through issues. I have, and for what it's worth, many other communities have that 3-minute recommendation. Portland does, for instance. I have added to the agenda, under the report of the president, the issue of any self-quarantining for returning Bayside residents. So that is a topic that's come up in the last day or two, or a few days, that people have been wanting to talk about. I've got it sitting under the report of the president. We'll address it then. And there is a chat button also in the lower right of your Zoom screen. Should have it. I think it's under reactions, Steve. If you raise reactions, you can also raise a little, not everyone has chat. You can raise a little hands up, thumb up. That's another way to get my attention. Okay. The technology may kick you out at some point along the way. Either you may freeze, the screen may freeze, you may, but other people, or you just may get kicked out entirely. Just go back to the link that you came in on, and it should return you back to the meeting. Anything I have not covered that people want to raise as issues? Yes, Vicky. Vicky.
Give me a minute to unmute.
Okay.
Are we being recorded? Did that get straightened out?
Nina?
I set it to auto record, and I'm also going to set over here, I'm going to attempt to set a screen recorder to cover all of this. I'm setting it up now.
Plus, Nina is taking notes. I'm not taking notes this time around. Nina will be taking written notes. Dan, I don't know what you're going to receive at the end of this whole thing, but it sounds like several versions will be available.
John, I already have the meeting recording.
Steve has meeting recording going. Any other issues before we begin?
John, I'm not, I'm familiar with Zoom, but I don't have chat here. Do we not?
No, chat, it's not on this one. So Michael, either raise your hand.
Okay, that's right.
Just raise your hand.
Yeah.
I think given the number of screens we have here, I'm able to, I'll move up closer so I can see. You're all sitting, by the way, on 10 books with my laptop up there so that to diminish the glare off the back of the room. Anything else? Miles, anything? No?
Nope.
You're just a happy guy. Okay. Let us proceed then. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 15th meeting?
So moved.
That was Jeffrey.
Second.
Second by Judy. Any discussion? Bill, you have to unmute. You have to unmute, Bill.
Reading the village agent's report.
Yes.
I did not ask for permission for Proc Marine to take the floats out. All I asked was to coordinate with the contractors to take, so we could get the floats by them and work with them to get the floats out of their way.
Okay.
I just read the minutes and I just picked that up. So
is that an edit we want to make and still vote on these, or would people like to see a new version of the minutes?
I'm comfortable with that edit.
Nina, can you make that edit?
Me too.
Did you hear what he said? We'll make that edit, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? And this will be easy because I'll ask you to raise your hands. You don't have to unmute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
It looks like it's unanimous. Thank you. Questions or issues from Bayside residents who are attending the meeting? Again, a reminder that we'll bring up under the President's report that issue about self-quarantining and the potential. Anybody like to address the group? And again, I would say I'm not seeing pictures for a bunch of people. Diantha, Deanna, John, etc. So I would say, yes, go ahead. David. Unmute, David. Unmute.
You're not supposed to touch your face. And if you touch your face, we're all going to see you touching your face in this format.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else from attendees? People should probably unmute and speak since I can't see I don't know about other people, but I don't have visuals on about 5 people on here.
they might have dialed in on their cell phone, see.
Could be. Steve,
John, I'm unmuting people when they're not doing it.
I beg
So
your pardon?
that if I can see somebody who starts to speak and they have not unmuted themselves, I am doing that.
Thank you.
So you'll hear them.
Thank you. But I'm not. Jeffrey,
Well, I see 6 people at the bottom of my gallery that don't come with pictures. So there's no way we can know that they want to speak unless they unmute themselves and start speaking.
Hi, this is Deanna Wolfire.
go ahead.
I'm just calling in to see what's going on and just to thank you all for being together and working for us.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm going to change this to right unmute to unmute to speak. Hopefully people hear that. David, I may have a,
I'm fine.
anyone else? We have another opportunity at the end of the meeting, so, but hearing none, I'm going to move on. Report of the treasurer.
Well, good morning, everyone. So, needless to say, we're not going to be signing warrants in the foreseeable future. So I plan to have you sign February warrants today. If you recall, the overseers passed a motion allowing me to pay bills before they sign the warrants. And that whole process is going to be postponed indefinitely. My plan is to send the overseers copies of the warrants so you can see what is actually being paid. No requirement to sign it unless you'd like to take a different approach. I suppose we could set up with DocuSign so you could all sign remotely. That seems cumbersome to me, but I leave that in your hands. These warrants are just going to be the warrant top page. It won't include any of the invoices and copies of checks you're usually using to compare the warrant to the invoice to the check. I would like a motion from the overseers to approve payment of March warrants. Those would normally be available to us at the meeting. Obviously, this meeting is occurring before March invoices are paid. So if you can approve my paying those between now and the May meeting, that would be great. This is a process I will probably request on a monthly basis until it's no longer necessary to do so.
Can we have a motion?
So moved.
It's Jeffrey. Second?
Second.
Second.
Judy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Miles, are you with us?
I'm unclear. Are we approving something where we haven't seen anything yet?
That is correct. And the reason you haven't seen anything yet is because we haven't gone through that process yet. Normally what happens is at the first of the month, we submit all of our invoices to the accountants for payment. The accountants process those warrants and I present them to you whenever the overseers meeting is, generally in the second or third week of the month. Because the April meeting will not take place until May 15th, I don't have those available. So our choices are to not pay vendors or to have you take the approach I described.
Is there another approach where we can approve your taking the action without actually the warrants that we haven't seen? I have full faith and confidence in you, but I'm reluctant to sign on to an approval of a warrant that I haven't seen.
You will see the warrant, Miles. What you won't see are the accompanying invoices and the accompanying checks. Now, if that is something that the overseers feel strongly they want to do, we can have Nina make available a process for you to get to all that information. The challenge with that is going to be that when you come to an overseers meeting, we have a warrant for general government, and those are sequential in order, including the invoice and the check. So to the extent you want to approve those, they're very easy to see and very easy to follow. What you are going to get is a warrant, which is a standalone document, a whole series of invoices, which are standalone documents and not grouped by utility and general government, a whole series of checks that are not tied to those invoices. So you will need to go through and match up those three separate sets of documents to satisfy beyond a question that everything is in order.
Nina?
I can set it up to scan if it helps. I can scan in the warrant with the invoices, with the checks, put in exactly the order to solve this problem. If that's something that needs to be done, it will take additional 5 minutes per warrant, and it will all be together and look exactly the way that you get it. We can provide the access virtually through an encrypted portal, and you can see it all like you normally do.
I'm not asking for that level of specificity. All I was asking was to see something before I approve it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but you're asking for something that's going to occur in the future. So I'm asking for a motion to approve the process, which means that
Oh, that's fine.
you will
I
have, you'll have the warrants before I sign the checks.
That's fine.
But the whole intent is to get our vendors paid.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Steve, a question for you.
Yes, sir.
As we move towards the annual meeting, if we are still in a virtual scenario like this, does that challenge the warrant process at all?
We can certainly, we can, it is possible to make everything available to you virtually. It's going to require a commitment upon the overseer's part to go through each and every one of those documents to do it. It is possible to have this information in the office, and overseers can swing by, review it, and sign each warrant at their convenience if they wish to. I think the risk will be minimal. The office is not staffed. You just have to make arrangements to get in there, take a look at them, and sign off. But that's entirely up to the overseers.
Okay.
You know, the warrant process, as I understand it, and Judy can help us with this one, was put into place because once upon a time there was absolutely no oversight from the overseers.
Long ago in the 80s. No one here is complicit.
Well before me. So that's an important check and balance, and one that I think we need to continue. There's a practical limitation on making it happen the way we have in the past. Now, if the overseers feel that they would like to have the ability to get those signed, we will set up with DocuSign. We can go through that whole process, send the information to you, and you can all sign off on the documents remotely.
Nina?
The software that I use for the remote encrypted portal has electronic signature availability that we can just use. So you won't have to, I'll hand it out to you to use, and we can send it for electronic signature. So you don't have to have an extra expense of using DocuSign.
So what I want to just add to that is that this is going to mean that as soon as you get a notification that the warrants are ready, you need to sign off on them, hopefully that day. This isn't the kind of thing that we can wait and do in a week or 2 weeks. Otherwise, it depends on what you approve me to do. If you want to be signing off on these warrants by DocuSign, until I have a quorum of overseers, I will not release any checks.
Not hearing anything to that regard, so keep going, Steve.
So I don't know where we are in this process. Do
I
I
think-
have approval to pay invoices? Are you looking for a different process?
No, you have approval to pay invoices.
The motion anticipated the approval of the invoices without all these extra safeguards that we've talked about, but weren't part of the motion, and we approved the motion.
Has the motion been, and the motion's been voted upon, so we're good to go?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So, excuse me, as with just about everything else in our world, financials have been delayed. I have them and sent them to the overseers this morning. You probably haven't seen them. There is nothing of concern to report at this time. And due to the timing of this meeting, March financials, which we would normally look at in the first week or 2 of April, won't be available for a while yet. Excuse
Steve,
me.
just take a pause there. Vicky, did you have a question? Vicky? Unmute, Vicky.
Okay. Yes. I was working so hard to be silent. Yeah. Are you ready to entertain questions about this financial that you sent out this morning? Because I did look at it.
Sure.
We have several different things going on with the monies or proposed or thought about with the monies budgeted for trees. And I notice under here, it's called tree removal. I don't see the budgeted monies in there that we have for this year, but it might be minor. And granted, in the last couple of years, we've used those monies to remove trees, but we also intend to get to a point where we're going to start replacing trees. Can we just call it trees?
No. We made changes at, I think, your request, but certainly the overseer's request to create 2 accounts.
Oh.
One account is tree removal, one account is tree planting.
Oh.
Because we have no history with tree planting, we put all of the budget into tree removal.
Okay.
So, I mean, to the extent that you want to plant instead of remove, the funds are available.
Okay.
What you see for a budget right now for tree removal is what we load based upon past experience. There is a much larger total. I've sent budgets out to all the overseers to give you the full year total. What you see here is the budget we loaded, which is somewhat arbitrary when it comes to trees, for the months of January and February.
Okay.
Something like your central main power budgets are much more accurate on a month-by-month basis.
Okay. I know at the end of last year, some trees were removed. There might have been a delay with the arborist getting the bills in. Yeah, so I can assume that those trees, based on this, were paid out of last year's budget then.
That is correct. What we did is, knowing they were coming, we accrue the funds so that we're prepared to pay the bills when they come in, and they're reported in fiscal 2019 instead of this year.
Great. I encouraged him to get those bills in so we could use those funds. Great. I just want to be clear on that.
And
Thank you.
great questions, Vicki. Thank you.
Judy?
So to follow up on Vicky's question, Steve, when we look at this financial, there is actually a line for 6.4 for tree replacement. And am I correct in assuming that 6.413, it just doesn't show?
It doesn't show because it has no activity against it and does not have a budget.
Okay. So, but when we do see that, that's where it will be, right under tree removal.
That is correct.
Okay.
You know, and one of the challenges is you can do a lot of things with QuickBooks. If there were a budget in there, the way I have this report set up is it reports everything with activity or budgets. If I wanted to, I can have it show every account we have, which is going to give you a plethora of meaningless information. So this, in my opinion, is probably the best way to go.
Keep going, Steve.
So in terms of old business, Browntail Caterpillar Control donations, we've received to date $9,537.69 worth of donations. At the last meeting, Overseers approved spending of $7,120, which leaves a remaining balance of donations of $2,417.69. And the audit, as you can imagine, that is delayed just like our financials are. All the companies we deal with are working remotely. Their offices are closed. So we have filed for an extension for the PUC report, and the audit is still delayed, but moving forward. In terms of new business, the bank anticipation note is closed. The funds are available. I'll be starting to move some of those back in to replace reserves we have used to fund MMI invoices as part of the design process until we had the bank anticipation note. So that's all as planned. With the office closed, Nina and Amy are working remotely, which I think you all knew. Nina has set up remote access to the office computer so Amy can continue working with Kusi. That's a real bonus because that's a platform we have to use, and staying on top of utility invoicing and collections is very important. Mike Lannon, we have an invoice to Malone McBroom for $10,000 you asked us to hold. I'm still holding that. Do you want to pay that or still wait?
You can hold that for now.
Okay, beautiful, thank you. And the last comment is budgets. I'll be sending out a separate note. So by the 1st of July, we need to have our budgets done. And really the only two budgets that I need much input on at this phase are safety and infrastructure. So Mike, if you guys could give some thought to that. You have information, I believe, that I've sent that gives I sent it to all the overseers to the best of my knowledge. You have spending for last year, you have the budget for this year, and I think have the tools you need to go forward with that. If for some reason you don't, let me know and I'll see what I can do to pull the information together.
Vicki?
Yes, we discovered an error or an omission with the tree work for the brown-tailed moth. Initially, Tree Works, wanted to prune everything, and he missed the point that we had agreed to go ahead with the pruning of the 2 trees in Ruggles. So the final bill he sent us was just for treating those trees. There's an additional $400 for pruning those trees in Ruggles. So those numbers are going to change a little bit. But Steve, I was going to send you something and forgot. But anyway, we just covered that this weekend.
Yeah, just to button things up, you just need to have a motion to approve those funds.
Okay, is that
because it seems like those are funds that the overseers have not yet approved. It's a technicality.
Okay, should I do that now, John?
Excuse me. I think that at our last meeting, we approved very specifically the pruning and the tree injection for the 2 trees in Ruggles Park, as well as the injection. Didn't we already approve that?
That's what I thought.
At a certain amount.
Well, yeah, but the bill he sent me was wrong, and I didn't realize that he didn't include the pruning. He just sent a final bill for each part for the treating. And so I went back to him and I said, no, we're not going to treat all the other trees, but we want to prune the 2 in Ruggles Park. And that was on his initial estimate, that was an additional $400. So if it's appropriate.
His estimate was off then.
He misunderstood when I asked for a final, I thought he.
Okay, yes. I hear you. So yes, we need a motion.
Okay.
My audio working. What did we approve I forget what the vote was, but didn't we set a number?
Yeah. What?
And aren't we within that number or are we outside that number?
To the best of my knowledge, we're outside of that number, if I understand what Vicki's saying. She presented a number that should have been $400 higher. The reason she didn't report it was the vendor had not given us that number. Do I have that right, Vicki?
Yes.
The number that we voted on, Michael, excuse me, was $7,120, which was his estimate for the injecting of the trees, and in Ruggles Park, the injecting and pruning of the 2 trees.
Okay, that's it. That included the 400. His final presentation to me didn't, but the total is 7120 with that 400.
Then you don't need a motion. We're within our.
That's where I was coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had to get my computer working.
Before we proceed, Nina, are we moving at a pace that works for you in terms of taking notes? Okay. Because if not, we can slow it down a little bit, and we're talking at our normal rate, and I realize that, okay. Steve, anything further for Steve? Or from, we're gonna move to committee reports, and we'll start with infrastructure and Mike Lannon.
I have nothing to report.
Well, I want to make a note that we received the agreement. Oh, sorry, Lisa? No, okay. We received the agreement from Michael Sabatini to essentially sign off on $1.4+ million. I forwarded that on to Mike Lannon and Steve and Bill for any comments or thoughts they had. It was a lengthy agreement, an unbelievably lengthy set of general conditions attached to it. And they both got back to me with some good notes. And so we have to resolve a few issues before we sign and move forward. Some of them are relatively, are just making sure that we all are agreeing to the same thing. It feels like the biggest tactical issue is that right now there is no person assigned to regularly track progress of the project, to physically be there, to be a clerk of the works, as it were, on behalf of the village. And so how we resolve that is something to be figured out. And there have been some thoughts on that. So I'm just letting people know that we have that certificate. Judy?
I remember Mike saying when we approved the bid that there was a timeline by which the contract had to be signed for Farley to be bound by its bid. Is that a correct memory?
That's
Mike-
correct.
Mike
30
Sabatini.
days.
30 days. So we still have 3 weeks or so to play with here. I'm just, I
And
will
it's
address it.
not uncommon to just ask for an extension to finish it off, especially in circumstances such as this. But I've done nothing with respect to the contract and plan to do nothing else at this point based on the votes from the last meeting. So I'm more than willing to discuss and offer some comments and so on, but I don't feel that I'm in charge of negotiating with them anymore. So I told Mike Sabatini this and told him that I'd love to talk to him about it sometime when I see him. But other than that, I've provided you some comments, and that's about it. Thank you.
Judy?
That's great. The Mike I referred to is Mike Sabatini, and my memory was 15 days. So it's great to hear we have 30. So thank you all for being on top of it.
Mhm. Thanks.
Anything else on infrastructure? Tree committee, Lisa?
Okay. As for the brown-tailed moth, we've covered some of that, and I think Vicki can go into more detail when it comes to that, as she's been working directly with that. I apologize for the people on the line that are not overseers. I recently have been working on the Merrithew Square and figuring out plantings for that, and so I have sent out what are approximate numbers and some ideas for some plantings. I touched base with Joe with the Historical Society and fixing the fence and some ideas there. And Judy has kindly reached out to Bob's family to ask for their input when it comes to some of the options that we were given. And so these options really are through Rockland Plants Unlimited because they're open. Some other places have already closed. So we're gonna go with them, and the guy in his car had the book from 2019 for the pricing. He assumes it's going to be about the same. It could be a little bit different, and once we figure out what we want, he'll get a bid, an actual in writing. But these were the specific numbers that he was able to give me, and I appreciated him coming out and doing this and making a special trip for us to do this. As you can see, we have 84 linear feet, which is the exact space that had plantings before. And so that's exactly what I used. I asked for a couple different options. The first option I asked for was some greenery that would be similar to what was there before. When he looked at he was able to tell what was there before, right? And those plantings had the ability to grow up to 20 feet once mature, which is why they got so large. So I asked him for something similar that would grow, 5 feet, something that would be more manageable for us. And I also asked for things that were native, although some of these are hybrids of natives, but we're in that ballpark. So the first option was the Arborvitae, and I just found a picture online for it, and you can see the different sizes. And if we just did those, you can see the pricing, anywhere from $979 up to $2,100. And that would just be a line of those. The second option was to do, and I also put down, I also asked for low maintenance. So all of these things just need to be trimmed one time a year. That's it. Okay. And option 2 was basically just doing a hedge of all, he said Miss Kim lilacs would work there with the lighting and whatnot. Again, you would need 14 lilacs to go the whole time. You can see the various pricing for all of those. For the people that don't have the sheet, it's anywhere from $811 approximately for the smallest size, all the way up to, if you got a 10-gallon size for each lilac, it would be close to $2,000. The final option, which I thought was the most lovely, actually myself, was a combination of greenery, such as what Bob had probably envisioned, along with some color. So some lilacs and some hydrangeas put in there. And we understand that kids do play in that area. And so initially the guy had said he would love all hydrangeas, but I just didn't know if a whole hedge of hydrangeas really would hold up to the kids. So having some sporadically in would be very nice. And for the people that can't see it, a hedge along there would look something like starting at the right corner fence, right, that the Historical Society is fixing up for us, would be like a hydrangea, then 2 globes of those evergreens, a lilac, 2 more globes, a hydrangea. Steve is going to actually donate his lilac, which is really a nice size. And that would kind of be centered behind that memo board we have there, okay? And then it would look the same on the other side and wrap around. So another hydrangea, 2 globes, a lilac, 2 globes, a hydrangea, that would now be in the corner, 2 globes and another lilac. And for the price of that lineup, you're talking, for the smallest size plants across the board, about $1,097. I have not gotten a quote regarding moving Steve's. He's willing to pay for half the moving price and we would pay for the other, but I did not ask Harley for that until we knew. I think Harley's getting over bombarded, and so I didn't want to ask him for that quite yet. Anywhere, so again, about $1,100 for the smallest size, up to say $2,300 approximately for the largest size. And so I just open it up to the board members to get their opinions on what they would like to see. Again, like the hydrangeas would flower from the spring all the way through the fall, which would be nice for color in there. So, and Judy, maybe you can speak to talking with Bob's family and what they felt. Okay,
Judy?
Thank you, Lisa. You've done such a beautiful job, about this. I have spoken with the family, at least the family representatives. They're really grateful that you're being sensitive about this. They also want you to know that although I was very upset about this and they are upset, they also know that things happen, and they love the forward-looking approach that you've all embraced on this, really modeling Bob Abersold's whole style of life. I sent off the Merrithew Square plan to them, and they like the variety, what I would now call option 3. So if they were choosing, they would choose option 3, but they also know that this is a community park. But they did say, Alicia said, certainly you want low maintenance because we don't have someone like a Bob Abersold who's going to commit to prune it for the next 40 years. So, it's been a good story at a good coda to a sad story. I really appreciate everything Vicki and Lisa have endured over all this and the extra work we've done.
Lisa, I have a question.
Yes,
This is my ignorance. Does a 3-gallon plant eventually grow to the same size eventually as a
Yes.
10-gallon plant, or is it?
yes, yeah. It's just basically like, you know, how long do we want to wait for it to grow? So like when he gave me the idea, so for instance, like you look for the hydrangeas, you know, a 3-gallon, he said would be about 2 feet tall. A 5-gallon would be starting out at 3 to 4 feet, right? And then eventually they all get 3 to 5 feet tall. So if he gave me them like how big he thought they would be for the gallon, I kind of put it behind that price tag. So really when you're talking about the smallest size, the larger size, they're all going to grow to be the same size. Just what do we want to start with and how long do we want to wait for it to be full grown, really? And to me, it's a matter of how much do we have in the budget as well, right?
Mike Lannon?
Yes, I think one of the things between the smallest and the largest that you need to consider is the durability of the plant. The larger ones tend to survive more. So that's one thing to consider, but my point of view is we should go with the smaller ones anyway, because we have plenty of time for these things to grow, and half the cost seems to be a little bit of a better idea. And so I'd make a motion that we go with option 3, the small price, and basically have that done. One of the things I don't like about the arborvitaes is, again, we have to have the roots removed from the last one. With these kinds of plants, even if they were to die, anybody can take them out with a shovel.
There's a motion to approve option 3 at the smallest price level. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Judy. Any discussion? Judy?
I noticed on the financials that the fundraising for the brown-tail moth and for the park restoration are in one line item, and you're going to divide them, Steve. How much money have we got for this park restoration?
Well, the answer right now is none.
No, I happen to know you have some.
Well, no, all those funds were dedicated and donated specifically for moth control.
Not mine.
Well, that yours is not in that total then. The
Okay.
total I gave you earlier, I'd have to look at that, Judy. I don't have that in front
Okay.
of me.
Okay.
And I know that the Historical Society had said that in addition to the fence, they also are committing some funds. I don't know how much.
And I've not seen those funds.
Vicky?
Yeah, I was going to touch on that after Lisa spoke, but we're getting into the financials. Yeah, Judy, your monies were designated for the Marathon Square at that meeting. The brown-tail moth, it came up to use some of those funds for Marathon Square, and I'm just going to say right now, I'm not in favor of that. I do believe we have plenty of money in the tree budget to pick up wherever donations end up. So if the Historical Society chooses or not chooses to donate money, the tree budget is good. There are no emergencies right now with the tree budget. I've asked the arborist who had some things on his plan to hold off until we found out where we were financially and what the plan was.
Okay.
If that clarifies anything for you.
Where the order we're going in now is Lisa, then Jeffrey, then Judy.
Hi, okay, so I spoke with Joe Riley, and the Historical Society is kindly giving $1,000 to us towards the planting and the finishing of the park, right? We have $1,000 from Judy. And I also forgot to mention, this was new to me and I just got an email about it. I have not worked with Rockland Plants Unlimited before. He said there's something about a bond that they're doing. So if you pay $75 to them, you get a bond that this is up until April 1st. And then after April 1st, you're able to use a $75 bond for $100. So if we were able to move on this quickly, it seems like for part of it, we could get some money off. Okay, so just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you. Jeffrey? Unmute, Jeffrey.
Yep. So if one would like to make a gift for the Merrithew Park restoration, how do we do that?
Steve?
So I can set up a donation account specifically for Merrithew Park. Just write a check to the Northport Village Corporation, make sure that it is indicated that it's for Merrithew Park.
Judy?
So Lisa said what I was about to say, which is that Wendy was sending me an email saying, yes, the Historical Society committed to 1,000. And I want to make sure, this is petty, but I want to make sure mine was for the plantings. It was very clearly noted on the check, not for any brown-tailed moth. So if I'm on, make sure it's accounted properly.
Vicky?
Yeah, you're all set. I don't know though, if someone can refresh my memory, there was discussion at the last meeting to use funds to remove all of the roots and stumps and debris and prepare for planting, which I thought was close to $2,000. And Lisa, I don't know if that is in your numbers or not.
No, we voted on that at the last meeting. I had a quote, actually it's $2,800 to get those stumps out. It's not an inexpensive proposition. And I do want to let Bill know that in this, we took in, his concern was that we did have something that came around that corner. Otherwise, the risk of people parking in that park where, at the far end where I think what North Street starts. And I think that, Lisa, that comes around, that's in there because we spoke about that. But yeah, so these things have been broken down into two different categories. And those monies to take those stumps out are coming out of the tree budget.
That was 2865 voted on last time. Lisa?
Yeah, I'm sorry, one other thing. So when I talked with Joe, one of the things I brought up was, and this is just my idea, is that I think in the front of the park where the fencing is, it's just the cutest part of the park, really, that fencing. And I had talked with Joe asking, I know they were fixing the front, if there was any possibility of putting like a mirror-like image in the back, you know, and he didn't say absolutely no. And I knew when I asked it was probably a no. But he said, you know, once they fix the front and they see how much effort and how much money that is, they would, you know, think about the back. But that would help out with the parking situation. And I did say that to him, like, before we plant, you know, we have this open space now, so that would be an option. I just threw it out. So I don't think they're close to that, and that could also help with the parking, but I just throw it out there. So, okay, thank you.
Judy?
The Talbot family, which is the third house in on that little park, has frequently complained about parking right there in front of them. So that's good that you're thinking of it. Thank you.
So there's a motion still to, which has been seconded, to act on the third option at the smallest price level, which is $1,097 plus half the cost to move Steve's lilac. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It looks like it's unanimous. Thank you.
One quick question. Lisa, if you could send me that paperwork, I'd appreciate it.
I can contact the guy now and I'll get a proper written bid for you. Would that be good, Steve? And then just send that right to you? Thank you.
Vicky?
And I would just say, in order to take advantage of the 25% discount, Lisa, you know what plants you want. Go ahead and make the order so we can take advantage of that 25%. If I see no reason if we voted it, correct, everyone? Because you got to do it by the 1st.
Steve?
Yeah, there's no reason you could not do that. And you're right, you have a deadline, which is a very short period of time away. So I think what we need to do to get this done in an appropriate amount of time is have the overseers move now as to how many of those bonds they wish to purchase. And we can use funds that we have. We have money. It ultimately is going to be coming out of either the tree budget or donations. So the thing will self-reconcile in a month or two. But for now, we need to do something, I think, Monday.
Am I hearing correctly that there is currently or will be $2,000 in donations at a minimum for what sounds like it's a $1,100 plus project? Just want to make sure I understand that. Vicky?
I would say, you know, I don't think we need to vote on that, how many bonds we want. I think it's basically turns out to be a 25% discount And I think Lisa, I'm comfortable with Lisa figuring that out with the guy from Plants Unlimited, who obviously, you know, wants the business. I don't think we need to vote on number of bonds. I'd have to sit here and figure this out in math.
10.
Mike?
10. We need 10. 10 would get us close to the estimate.
Steve?
You know, so I'm working off the information that you have all provided, which says we have to do this by April 1st. If you talk to the guy and you say, we're going to do it, we need a couple of days to figure it out, will you give us a 25% discount on the order? That'll get you there too.
Okay.
But my concern would be if he wanted to hold hard and fast and say April 1st and we don't do something, you lose that 25% discount, as I understand things now.
But Lisa is authorized to act on behalf of the village, I believe.
Yes.
Lisa?
So I'll just contact the guy. I'll tell him what our plan is, say that I want the written bid, and I also want, you know, which way do we need to go in order to get the 25% off? So everyone comfortable with that? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tree warden, Vicky? Unmute, Vicky.
Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry. A lot of this has been covered, so I'm just going to go updates on brown-tail moth. I just want to say that I have spoken to, this is the Tree Works guy, Shane Hendricks. I have asked that he let me know when he's going to start and let Bill Page know when they're going to be in the village doing this. So I just want to say to Bill, if he contacts you or if he contacts me, that we each acknowledge that we're aware he's coming in to do the work. I assume when the weather changes, it's my understanding this has to be done in April or May when the weather's ready. There's I believe 9 trees in Auditorium Park, just as a reminder, 11 trees in Blaisdell that are going to be treated. The 2 fruit trees in Ruggles are going to be clipped and treated. I did ask him about the timing of the clipping. Since this is not a pruning, it's just clipping the cocoons off, there should be no damage to the trees. So we will see how this works. I did get a question from somebody, actually I think it was Suzanne Rico. Somebody was concerned about a tree near their house. I don't have the address, but I said we were open to consider a possibility of other trees as we still had monies. I had been questioned about the 2 trees in Marathu between the driveway and the pump house, because it looks like they're filled with cocoons, but it's a black locust and those are seed pods. So that made everybody very happy because it looks like it's loaded with cocoons. So requests are coming in. I just want to say that we made these decisions based on the number of people and activity in these areas. And that's why we zeroed in on these 3 areas to try to get a handle on this. The other thing is I have now had 2 reports, one from an arborist who was doing work for the golf club who was clipping over in Searsport or Stockton Springs. And you may have heard this if you haven't. The cocoons that they clipped were filled with dead caterpillars and they're not sure why. And then a resident here whose husband was clipping found that their cocoons were filled with dead caterpillars. So I think that's kind of good news. We're not sure if it's because of the wetness of last year. I don't think anybody's explored the reasons for that, but it sounds hopeful in that we haven't peaked out here in this area for brown-tailed moths. So we addressed the Marathu Square landscaping. As far as I've been acting as a liaison for Bayside Arts, and I did clarify that they were still going ahead with their plans for now, but obviously with the virus, that could change. Who knows what the summer is going to bring, but right now they're going ahead. They have assured me that they will work with Bill with the electrical lighting system that we've been considering for them. They will work with Bill to make sure it meets code, or it won't be done. And I hope that suffices. I'm not sure if you want to vote on that. The other piece on the cleaning, and this goes back a couple of meetings ago, I have forgotten to bring it up though, but I engage a cleaning person who has agreed, if you want, to do the cleaning for the community hall. Normally we do that around the 1st of May, so it's ready for any activities there. The rate would be $50 an hour. She's a very hard worker. She'd probably get it done in less than 1 day. As we get closer, I told her I could take her over there to show her and she could give me an idea. And so I'm not sure if you want to act on that either, but I'm putting that out there that we do have somebody willing to take that on. And that is all I have.
Questions? Judy?
So even if we are unclear as to whether there will be a Bayside Arts season, I think that Vicki has answered the question we left tabled last time on the electrical, the placement of the lights with those black bars that they were going to mount. So perhaps it is appropriate to act on that motion that we tabled last time. Give the illusion that life is proceeding in a normal fashion, even with a virus.
Vicki?
I just want to add that it was requested that I speak to the Historical Society, and Mr. Riley got back and said that he thought it was fine, and I think Beverly Crowfoot and somebody else was going to go over and take a look, but so far they have no issues with installing the lights from a historical standpoint. I have not heard back from Beverly or Mr. Riley since he sent me a thing saying that he thought it would be fine and he would put it out to their group at their next meeting.
So just to remind everybody, at our last meeting on the 15th, there was a motion made by Judy and seconded by Vicki to approve the proposal by Bayside Arts to install those 2 or 3 foot black vertical pipes, essentially, to which the lights would be attached. There was question by Bill appropriately about, are they going to be running extension cords off these things? That's not going to work. How Vicki says they say they'll work to make it up to code and they're not going to install them otherwise. So that motion was tabled until the overseers received more information. I don't know if the overseers want to vote on that right now or if they feel they have the appropriate information. Somebody would need to make a motion. Vicki?
Sorry.
Vicki?
I move that we give approval to Bayside Arts to upgrade their lighting in consultation with Bill to make sure it meets code.
Seconded by anybody?
Second.
By Judy. Any discussion?
Just the motion's broader than what we talked about last time. It's not just improving their lighting, it's to install the lighting as proposed by them. If we accept that?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Here's Mike, Mike Lanner, are you not voting on that? Abstaining? Yes, abstaining. 6 in favor, 1 abstaining. Anything else? I think that's it for you. Am I correct, Vicki?
Yes, sir.
Communications, Lisa?
Nothing has been posted in these 2 weeks, but I know, John, you and I have been in contact. You kindly contact the company who do the printing. And I think just in light of everything going on, we also have to just be thinking in our minds that perhaps we won't be printing and we'll be doing this as a virtual something online. So as we go, we'll figure that out.
She's making reference to the annual report,
Oh, sorry.
which we contract through a company called Hollow Ridge Communications in the area. They've done it for quite a while. And I did reach out to them and they basically said it's a go as far as we're concerned for the annual meeting. So I've asked them for more specificity regarding the dates when they need information. But for the moment, we're moving forward in that regard.
Yeah.
Anything else, Lisa?
I don't think so.
Okay. Finance Committee, Judy? Mute, Judy, mute. Judy, mute. Judy,
Nothing to report.
thank you. Governance Committee, keep your unmute up.
Well, Governance Committee is the parking ordinance. You all have now had it since March 8th. We, subject to the ability to have public hearings, we want to obtain a recommendation from the overseers that this draft can be presented to the community for public hearing and comment. I would welcome today any specific comments or questions any of you have on it. I see that many members of our committee are on the line, and I know that they would be happy to chime in as well. Dan Webster and Deanna Wolfire in particular were instrumental in preparing this particular ordinance, and with the great input of Bill Page and Michael Boucher, and many members of the community. Sandy's on the phone as well. Sandy was an important piece of the committee here as well. So happy to entertain any specific questions that any of you have about the ordinance itself.
Judy, do you want to take this as a motion and then have the questions occur as discussion, or you want to have questions right now?
I defer to you.
I'd rather have questions right now. Steve, Kaz?
Just a question. I was going to hold this for the public comment period, but as we restrict parking, we're going to displace people who are going to look for new places to go. One of the pieces that appeared to be missing was the upper part of Bayside Park on Rogers Lane. So the folks who right now park on the corner of C Street are going to need someplace else to put their vehicles. So the question would be, does it make sense to restrict parking in that area as well, as has been customary?
That's a very good point.
Yeah, sorry.
Steve. And I've made a note so that we can make sure we put that, we can confer with the committee and put that in.
Mike Lannon?
I just like to talk about the elephant in the room, which is, the virus and everything that's going on. I think this parking issue is something that people are going to have a lot of opinions on. And I just think that this particular summer might not be the right time to do this. I think what we need is, all we need is something that enforces that we're going to have a 10-foot wide pathway to make sure that emergency vehicles can get through, and we should take it at that for right now and not try to divide up the community at this particular time.
Judy?
I agree that much of what we do and discuss in the next month, weeks, will all be conditioned upon the larger matters. Maybe my British background where I want to keep calm and carry on, but I think that subject to our ability to have that broader discussion, I think we should continue on the path. We've done some really good hard work here and we don't want to lose it. Parking has always been an issue and it's been kicked down the road. We haven't had the ordinance changed for almost 20 years. So I think that if we have the ability to have a public conversation, we should have that public conversation. Clearly, if we cannot have a public conversation, we shouldn't. I want to comment specifically on your note, your comment, Mike, that a 10-foot clearance for safety vehicles is appropriate. We have conferred with the fire department and the ambulances, and of course, relied upon the expertise of Billy, and we have put in here a 14-foot clearance based on the recommendations of the safety officials.
Michael? Wait, Michael Terrell, I'll come back to you, Mike, in a sec.
Oh, you mean now?
Yes.
No, go ahead, Mike. You're in dialogue there.
Of course, 14 feet would be better, but 10 feet is what you need to get a fire truck through there at this time. If we were just making a small edit to make sure that we could do what we need to do right now, making sure we have a 10-foot clearance and having the cop enforce that seems to be all we need at this particular moment. And we can come up with something for 14-foot wide and so on in the future, but the difference between the 10 and the 14 creates about 10-fold more questions and concerns that people have to deal with. And again, because of where we are right now, it seems like that we can have a public meeting on this and discuss it, but I just think it's a controversial topic for many people. We're talking about people having to come and self-quarantine and then park across the village on another side of the village. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to talk about it right now.
Michael?
I see your point, Mike. I disagree, though. I think a lot of hard work's gone into this, and I think we should continue in some way, however we do this meeting that Judy's aiming for. We can do it via Zoom or whatever, but I think we should continue. There's a lot of work here, and I don't think we need to retreat on everything because of this virus.
Judy, I have a question. Am I correct in understanding that for currently on many village streets, cars park on both sides, half on the grass, half on the street? And this would essentially eliminate that opportunity, and people, we're gonna move away from that. Am I correct in understanding that?
I think I would voice it or characterize it differently. Today, we have a parking ordinance that says you shall not park in a way that blocks traffic up and down the streets. This draft says it more clearly with clearer enforcement opportunities. So it will be eye-opening to people in that it now defines better what the ordinance is always intended to say. We have an ordinance in place right now. And it does also take into consideration the fact that much of what people park on, which they perceive as their front yard, is really the way. This is particularly for dirt roads. So it will require an education piece as well as an enforcement piece. Right now, we already have an ordinance which tells people, like my beloved brother-in-law, that he shouldn't be parking the way he parks, but we don't enforce it.
Got it. Mike, I'll get to you in just one second. So, but just in terms of the reality of it, I live on Clinton and people park half on their lawn, half in the street, and we're not going to be able to do that according to this ordinance. If the ordinance is enforced, we're not going to be able to do that. We'll park somewhere. We're going to have to park somewhere else. Just how it's going to play out if it's enforced.
Right, and that's exactly right. That some people, and you've given a good example of your own. You park in front of your house, Judy. If someone parked at the other side of the street from you, there's a possibility the 14 feet width will therefore be blocked. The tradition has been that the 14, as to your street, that because Judy has a driveway, no one parks directly opposite you. But yes, this is going to require some changes in behavior.
Mike?
As chair of the infrastructure committee, we've looked at a number of these roads, and most of the roads, the paved roads going vertically, are 16-foot wide surfaces. So if one car pulls off and sticks in the road 2 feet, then nobody can park on the other side. So the answer to your question is yes. On the dirt roads, it's compounded even more because one side typically has a ditch, and you can't pull off the road 2 feet on that side, because you just can't do it. So once you have a car on the other side, then that's it for that area. So we really will have one side parking on those roads, unless people are willing to drive down and park sort of on the side into the ditch. And I'm not sure we want to propose that as well either. So there are a lot of things to work out with this ordinance still. So especially with this 14-foot requirement in the village. We should have made the roads much wider if we were going to come up with a 14-foot wide clearance, because we have a 35-foot right of way. So to suggest that we need a 14-foot wide pathway for traffic means that we needed 20 to 24-foot wide roadways in order to do this. So we really can't do this ordinance as written, and it's going to be very, very upsetting to people because it just doesn't work right now. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't work.
Judy, I would, if we are able to have public meetings on this, and by the way, Michael, I'm not sure they could be pulled off via Zoom, given I think they would have to be live, which may or may not be able to happen. I would hope the extensive use of illustrations and drawings and photographs to show how this would literally play out. I appreciate everything the committee has done. That's words on paper and versus the reality of what people are gonna have to face, as Mike has indicated, outside their front yard. Judy?
Yeah, I agree with you that it was very helpful to the committee to have visuals in front of us when each individual block was discussed, both with regard to the individual properties to see, well, do they have a driveway? How many cars do they fit in their driveway? We mapped that out block by block by block. It also is very helpful to us. Danny was always sending us aerial photographs with mock-ups as we were talking, and we could see what we were talking about. So if we have a public meeting, our plan is to have a public meeting over Memorial Day weekend with those mock-ups, incorporate people's comments from that, if we can have one, work those into any revisions that people suggest. For instance, Steve's very concrete suggestion of, oops, did you guys forget about Upper Bayview Park? We should look at that again. And Mike's very concrete conversations, then bring it back to you, have another public meeting. Our goal in the ordinary world, and I know we do not live in an ordinary world, is to have this in place by the July 4th weekend when things get busy. We also, I want to remind everyone that through the good work of Martha Beezer, the school department has allowed us to use the school parking lot for July 4th weekend, for those 3-4 days of the weekend, and for AIR for satellite parking. We won't be towed out of there. We have permission to do that, and that will be a great resource that we want to be communicating through Lisa as well, that there's alternatives available for people who have friends and family coming on those crowded times.
Any further? We don't have a motion yet. Judy?
I would move that the draft presented on March 8th to the overseers be presented by public hearing for consideration to the community on no less than 2 public meetings scheduled prior to July 4th, if possible.
Is there a second?
Well, I have a question.
Oh, wait, first I want to find out if there's a second. Is there a second?
Well, I have a question with the way it's worded. The if possible is if we don't have the meetings and the motion is no good, or if we can have the meetings, we will have the meetings. So if you could just clarify, Judy, that'd be great.
Sure. The intent, if possible, was intended to modify the possibility of having a public meeting, 2 public meetings, because of the coronavirus epidemics. So if the pandemic is still in place and we cannot have gatherings of more than 10 people, then we would not have public meetings, because I agree with John. I do not believe this public meeting can occur except in a public setting.
And people
Sorry,
need
go ahead,
to
Mike.
visualize it. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah. Okay.
Vicki, were you going to second that motion, or?
Yes, I was going to second. Yes, second.
So it's to accept the March 8th proposal by the committee with the understanding that there would be a minimum of 2 public meetings before July 4th, and that the overseers would still get another chance to weigh in, as I understand it, Judy.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion or any discussion?
I'd like to make an amendment, and I doubt I will get a second, but I will try. I'd like to amend to say that we would have the discussion this summer, but we wouldn't do anything formal till next summer, similar to what we've done with the waterfront safety, to gather data, see how it works out, and so on. We can make it sort of recommendations and then move forward with it really working out the next year would be my suggestion.
Dan Webster, were you wanting to say something in here?
I just wanted to ask logistically, can you hear me, I assume?
Yes.
If you have 2 public meetings before July 4th, but the second one isn't before your June overseers meeting, how would you approve the ordinance in advance of July 4th?
Thank you. Judy?
Dan, before the world started crumbling around us, we had all talked about Memorial Day weekend and then an early June meeting so that it could be discussed and approved at the overseers if they were inclined to do so at the June meeting. That is a very compressed timeline, but it's the timeline that we had laid out at our last meeting in February. I don't personally think that that's going to happen, but I also think that as part of the keep calm and carry on lifestyle, we should do our best to make it happen.
There's currently an amendment, which is to approve this, but not institute it until 2021, in the form that we use with the Waterfront Safety Committee and their recommendations. Is there a second to that amendment?
Fair enough.
Vicky?
I'm confused. Okay, so we approve this as it is, and then we take it to the public, and then it has to come back for a second approval?
Yes. You cannot approve the ordinance. Sorry, John, I jumped on top of you. You can't approve the ordinance until you've had your public hearings, and then you incorporate comments by the public, and presumably we then can have an approval by the overseers if we can have a timely meeting. It is a very tight timeline, but that's our goal.
Keep going.
Okay, then I would say maybe, Michael, the time for your amendment would be when it's going for final approval. I mean, we're just talking about the basics of this amended and updated parking ordinance and the ability to take what we have to the public. And it may come out, the public might also support you in postponing it, or, you know, doing a trial run and postponing the whole thing till the 2021. Does that feel comfortable to you, Michael?
Mike Lannon, then Michael Terrell.
Mike Lannon.
No, because what the intent of the public meetings would be to say to have this approved by July 4th. And I just think we should have a discussion about this before we have any sort of deadline, because if there's anything I learned with the seawall process is any meetings you have before July 4th, many people say you had it before the season even started, even though we know that a lot of people have been here, but not everybody comes until July and August. And it just seems like if we're following the procedure that we followed for other things, that we would have a discussion and then later we would have a vote after we sort of tried out some of the things. So again, that was my suggestion. So, but no second. So
Michael Terrell.
Yeah, I'm still confused. So for instance, aren't we looking to have, isn't the process at this stage that we're looking to, or at least my advocacy would be that we move towards having what Judy's looking for is input in some kind of hearing or multiple hearings. And oh, by the way, I think the technology, not this technology, but there is other technology that we could use to accommodate that. And that we take this one step at a time, that we not sort of say, oh, not, let's just put it all to another year. I think, Mike, you are premature, because I frankly might support your motion once we're there, but we're not there yet. So I think that that's where I'm at. Can we go to the next step, which is elicit and solicit and all the rest, ISITs,
go ahead,
around public input.
Got it. Vicky?
Yeah, and I think as much as I think that this is needed in some form or another, we really get caught between a rock and a hard place by having community meetings before July, because everybody comes back and they're upset because they weren't here. And you know, again, I don't want us to put ourselves in the position where we shoot ourselves in the foot because we didn't get the appropriate feedback from the population.
Yeah, and that's really all I was getting at. Was I agree with you, Michael. We don't have to decide when we're going to vote, but to try to schedule 2 meetings before July 4th and then that be the end of it, that's the concern I have, I guess.
I see, yeah, I see.
There's still a motion on the floor then, which is the motion to approve this with the process being a minimum of 2 public meetings before July 4th and the overseers hearing it in June. So it would be a squeezing in there to make all that happen. Yes, Judy.
Wait, and just to clarify, the motion is not to approve this. The motion is to present this to the public in public meetings.
No, but the motion is to approve the timeline you're suggesting.
Yes.
Jeffrey? Unmute Jeffrey.
I would believe that if we pass this, which is allowing the process to move forward, and either we're unable to have a public hearing or no one shows up at the public hearings, I think we're in a much different position vis-a-vis approving it. And I would be less likely to vote to approve it if we can't have a public hearing, or we have a public hearing and no one's there. I think the purpose of today is to just give overseer approval to have the public hearings.
Exactly.
Mike?
And I'd like to make a different, I'm assuming my last amendment didn't go anywhere, right? So I'd like to make a second amendment that says that we would have at least one public meeting in July or August to discuss this before we came back to the overseers for a vote.
In addition to the minimum of 2 meetings theoretically happening before July
It
4th.
wouldn't have, I don't think you need 2 before July 4th, but one to get everybody who really is interested to talk about it now, and then one for when the public is here.
So the amendment is to have another meeting, a public meeting in July or August.
To have at least one public meeting in July or August, and then whatever other ones the committee thinks they need to have.
So just so I understand, Mike, are you saying we would not then need any up until July or August?
I don't care. I'm just saying, I just want to have one when everybody's here.
Is there a second to that motion? Jeffrey? Jeffrey?
I have a question. We have a July meeting, correct?
Yes.
After July 4th.
After July 4th. Would a compromise be to try to do a public hearing that July 4th week? Because there are a lot of people here. Again, it would modify the timeline. Some sense we would approve it in June in July instead of June, but I don't know if we have a fear that we're not going to be able to have a public hearing, or we're not going to have great participation in a public hearing. What do we lose by suggesting that we do a public hearing during the July 4th period? That's a question I have before we.
Judy?
I don't think we lose anything, Jeffrey, but I do think that I haven't done a good job of communicating the process of the public hearings. So let's use the zoning ordinances as an example. We're trying to get this on the path of timely public hearings. We're trying to address the complaints we've had, particularly about parking problems in July 4th. Whether or not we have an ordinance to present again to the overseers to approve is really dependent upon what input we get. For now, the committee had laid out 2 possible times before our June meeting so that we could address one of our principal concerns, which was July 4th gets to be a hard time for people. As a consequence of those public hearings, it may very well be that the governance committee comes back and says, we have to dust this off. We don't have time to change the 17 things that people want changed, or this is good to go. But this allows us to put before you a report from the governance committee as to what has occurred. Michael makes a good point. If our report is simply, nobody came, even though Lisa put 12 notices out, then we have a piece of information. Right now, we don't have any information to communicate to you as to the next steps. This allows us to communicate and gather further information.
2 amendments have been proposed, neither has been seconded. The motion is still to accept this report and allow the committee to essentially move forward with its proposed public meetings. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1. Abstaining? Miles, you opposed or abstaining? Opposed. 5 and 2. Thank you. Anything else, Judy?
Not from the governance committee, no.
Personnel committee, Jeffrey?
The Personnel Committee has no report. We will be scheduling an April meeting this week, but no report for now.
Utility committee, David Crowfoot, we actually have you here. We usually just have your name here, but now we have you here. Unmute, David. David, unmute.
I'd prefer Judy to give the report.
All right.
Well, we haven't met since our last meeting, but things are on track for the building bid to go out. And the last meeting, we had the superintendent's report about how great the plant is working. We have had reactions to our billing. Dick McElhaney, David, and Mike have all engaged with the community to talk about the sewer increases in particular. I think that Dick McElhaney, David, and Mike all deserve kudos for the careful way in which they've reminded people that because of the fact that we are now treating or will need to treat 365 days a year instead of the 6 months a year, that's just going to double our costs, and we've done everything we can to keep things as low as possible. So if you have questions about the billing, I encourage people to talk to Dick McElhaney. David Crowfoot is the chair. Communication is one of the most important things. David put a very nice letter in the bills that was approved by the trustees. And the clearest and best way to get clear answers is to ask the question of the people who know the answers. Thank you.
Michael, did you have a question?
No, I did not. Sorry.
Okay. Questions for Judy, Utilities Committee? We're moving along. Safety Committee, Michael?
Yeah, the committee met this week or last week. We have most of the update that I have is on the recruiting for police and fire. I'm sorry, police and lifeguards. So we have a candidate that has submitted a package of a background and application for the police. You recall that what we're doing is recruiting to possibly replace Ben Huntoon, who cannot, for those who were not part of an earlier conversation or don't know this, Ben has limitations on what he can commit for next season. So we are looking to have a third option that might in fact replace Ben or might augment and be a third. So it might be a second officer or a third, depending. All, of course, within the context of the budget allowance, et cetera. So nothing there extra. But we have a candidate, so we're going to move forward with an initial screening of this candidate with Michael Boucher, myself, and Bill Page. So we're looking to schedule that now. And then we'll, of course, I'll open it up to the overseers, fold it into some other process involving the personnel committee, et cetera. That was our advocacy on for the safety committee. Secondly, the lifeguard update. We've posted everywhere, and we have had no responses to date yet on the on the open position there. Just pausing for a minute to look at, so I can update you where we posted. So we posted Craigslist, Hudson University, Beale University, Maine Municipal Association, and we're attempting reach out to the YMCA in Belfast. We've also approached, Gina's doing some outreach down through Camden and Rockport with the Y there. We've had no advance yet on that, so we're still pushing on that. The committee members, you can help me on this. I think that's it. We discussed putting Safety Day on hold because of the obvious issues around the virus. But the planning is on hold at this stage. Again, so much is TBD around the virus, as we know. I believe that's it.
If there are any safety committees who are on just by audio who'd like to comment, if you unmute your your box changes on screen, I can see it and recognize you. So if anyone has anything to say. Do any of the overseers have any questions for Michael? Hearing none, we'll move on. Waterfront safety, Jeffrey.
No report at this time.
Okay. Town of Northport issues. This will lead into what I'm going to talk about, I guess. Vicky, anything in particular? No.
No.
Report of the president. I'm going to talk a little bit about the issue that has come up from several directions regarding how the COVID-19 virus will affect Bayside. There has been some questions from the public about what the overseers and the NVC's stance should be on this. There has also been, pertinent to this, you may know, an announcement from the town of Northport. And it's relatively brief, so I'm going to read it. Excuse me, I'm going to read it out loud just because I think it's worth to hear it. It's only a couple sentences. And it's on their website. And it's addressed to seasonal residents, visitors, or those traveling outside of the state of Maine. Based on CDC recommendations, if you have been traveling out of the state, out of the country, are returning from your winter home, or are not feeling well, we urge you to self-quarantine for 14 days in your home. This is to flatten the curve, hopefully stop the spread of the virus, and not exceed the capacity of our healthcare system so that they can continue to help those in need. We have many older residents or residents with underlying medical conditions who would be more vulnerable to the virus. So please stay home. The life you save could be your mom or dad, Grammy or grandpa. I've been thinking about this a lot in the last few days. It appears that there are a few options that the overseers could take. One would be to say that, obviously, we are part of the town of Northport, and we support and will follow, and to the degree that we can, there's no enforcement indicated here, but we will support and follow and inform people what the town has already said. Another would be to take out a separate stance, perhaps, that would be specific to Bayside. The degree of enforceability of that stance is another matter. Everybody has the right to come here to their house, and many of the people on this screen right now, in fact, almost all of us, have houses in the state of Maine. And so some, I live in Portland, Judy lives in Bath. I mean, is it a question of how close you live to Bayside? So I'm not so certain how we could get in that. It's been proved around the country in various contexts. You probably know about North Haven here in Maine, what's going on recently in the tri-state area around New York City. There's no legality currently to telling people they can't go somewhere. A town cannot pull up the gates, nor can a state. Things may change. We may move to different situations, but right now, as the law is interpreted, that's not allowed. So I open the floor, though, for overseers to offer their thoughts. Judy.
My view is that we are members of the town of Northport, and that at most I would be comfortable echoing their point of view, but I'm comfortable with understanding that they have placed a notice that reminds us all to be careful, good citizens. The utility departments did address this by reminding people that they're, particularly the summer people who only have seasonal water, that we're not going to install their meters before April 20th, and encouraging them to let us all know a later date that they would come. So we have tried to address this through that public notice. What concerns me is that we want to assure that we never lose sight of the fact that we are members of the same world and the same community and the same friendships. And so I don't want to see Bayside in the newspaper the way Vinyl Haven was in the newspaper today for having cut down a tree to block someone's driveway so he couldn't leave his house once he arrived. We are all mindful that we're all in the exact same boat. We're all intelligent, smart, and kind people. And I'm comfortable with just living with the notice from the town of Northport generally that we should be smart and sane and good citizens by staying away from everyone else.
Mike Lannon?
I agree. We do not want to cut down any trees and block people in their driveway. I hadn't heard that.
Trees.
Yeah, but well, Vicky doesn't want to cut any trees anyway. But I think we have some local logistics that we should start to discuss. Just an example would be, are we going to have people storing kayaks in common areas this year? You know, things like that at this time. When's the time to discuss that? Now, the next meeting? You know, there are things, there's a lot of common areas in Bayside. When are we going to start discussing the use of our common areas and so on, with respect to trying to keep everybody safe at the same time as allowing everybody the access? I understand what you're saying about, you know, we're not going to rope off Ruggles Park and say nobody can come in here, because that's not what we're talking about here. What we're saying is, how are we going to keep kids from a whole bunch of kids from playing together at the playground and stuff, if it comes to that? And maybe it's premature, but it seems like we should start to have some discussion.
Vicky? Then Jeffrey.
I always heard Vinyl Haven was kind of tough, but I hadn't heard that yet today. I did hear about North Haven. I echo Mike Lannon. I think it warrants taking a look at, or making a list of those things that we might want to consider. And hopefully we never really have to do anything, but I can certainly see, you know, I think, again, it's this thing where everybody polices themselves. I'm not sure where the boundaries are about policing everything else. And I certainly would be more than willing to have Dr. Crowfoot step in right now as a respected authority and medical person. But I do think it warrants a conversation.
Before that, Jeffrey was indicating he wanted to say something.
Well, I'd be happy to hear what David Crowfoot has to say as well. I agree with Vicky and Mike on this. But I also think this is a communications issue too, in terms of just reminding people the importance of social distancing and things like that, even in Bayside, even at the park. I do worry as we think about these things that we really have no way to enforce stuff. And I think we just have to realize that unless we're going to post a police officer at Ruggles Park, I don't quite know how you enforce it. So my sense is this is communications and reminding people to follow appropriate practices. And that's all I have.
David, did you have something you wanted to say? No. Vicky.
The community hall is one place we do have some control over. We can not take reservations, or we can accept reservations now with a disclaimer as far as depending on, which I'm sure those people that are planning on using the community hall or who have used it in the past anticipate. Coming April 1st, you know, it was the time we were going to contact the dancing people, the ballet people, the yoga people. I'm assuming, I'm not sure if those requests have come in, and I'm more than willing to take that on and take it off of Nina's plate and Bill's plate, and we can take their reservations with a caveat. Any comments?
Judy, then Mike.
There was a funeral that someone was planning on doing, I think Memorial Day weekend. Have we been in touch with them?
Nina.
The people that I have spoken to, I have told them that it is dependent upon the future, and they were understanding. So I did speak to Mr. Andrews about that, and he understood, as well as anyone else. And as we speak to people or give out applications, that is a disclaimer that I am giving just to make sure, I haven't had any pushback on it.
Judy, then Mike.
Just to follow up, I think Michael makes a very good point about not having the common areas used for storage during this time of personal property.
That's
Mike?
right.
Yeah, so and then one other thought I had was, how are we going to coordinate this sort of with the yacht club? Because to me, obviously the yacht club is a yacht club, but it's also sort of a social club, and there are a lot of activities that occur there and how do we coordinate as overseers with that? Is there any coordination, or do they just sort of do whatever they're going to do and we're going to do what we're going to do, or how does that work? So it's just a question.
Jeffrey.
I don't have an answer to Mike's question, but I was going to pose an additional question, and that is, what guidance has the state of Maine given in vis-a-vis group size and things like that? Has the state made any comment? I think the governor has, but some clarification on that would be helpful, because I think the state's guidance kind of trumps anything we would do.
Correct. Judy or Mike, in response to that?
I can send you the Governor Mills's most recent statement, which of course changes every day, not because she's quixotic, but because the situation is difficult. So the clearest guidance so far in terms of use of common areas is 6 feet distance and no more than 10 people. So the example I think Michael gave of the playground in the basketball court, that would not be a kid standing there alone shooting shots. That'd be okay. His brother 6 feet away from him, that would be okay. A pickup game, a full team, not okay.
No. Michael?
Yeah.
Terrell?
And I think, just to add to the conversation here, I think we are talking about a snapshot in time. That this, what we're talking about now, may in fact change June and July. You know, that's what everyone, right? We're all in this state of hover around all this.
Yeah. Miles? Unmute.
He did.
Go ahead.
I'm unmuted. I have a very specific concern, and I want to try and express it clearly. It is very odd that in this time, something like the virus has become politicized, but it has. And we need to be mindful of that, and mindful of, I think, our job as public servants. And I was very surprised to see the Northport posting, because I haven't seen anything from the CDC that suggested self-quarantine from people who came from wherever. And I think what's most important right now is that anything we do be evidence-based, be science-based, and that we not offer an opinion unless we have knowledge to back up that opinion. So I think we really need to have that process of discernment, and not to offer to the public our feeling, which is not supported. And therefore, I would very much defer to the state on this matter. There will be times where we probably need to do things, for instance, around the community hall, but I would be very hesitant to just put out that is going to, in some way, be divisive. If we were to say, for instance, as did, that you should self-quarantine, I think there is a substantial minority of people that's just going to anger, and they're going to say, well, why did you decide that? was it based on? And I think we want to be sure that we reinforce the scientific evidence for any decision so that people will follow it. And I think what's important right now is all sort of people in authority jump on the same bandwagon. So there is a consistent, clear message that people know to follow.
Okay, Lisa, then Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what a lot of people are saying here. I do think that we have to be careful with our words, right? And exactly what the CDC is saying. And again, like I have posted before, you know, right now the CDC is saying people from New York City. Now I know that's changing, right? But I think we have to be very careful with our words. And I think again, echo, I think what Judy had said is very applicable here, right? And I say this as a person from New York. I am an hour outside of New York City. I have been here for well over 2 weeks now, came here before it was even shelter in place in New York, right? And I do feel tension. People see my cars in the parking lot in my driveway with New York, and you can tell people are afraid of me. And mind you, when we came here, I was very clear. People would come to talk to me. I would say, back up. We are social distancing. We are from New York. Back up. And we did, right? So I'm using common sense as well. I do think people are in a state of fear. I do worry about Bayside as a community. Summer residents versus year-round residents. I just hope people remember to use common sense, right? And that we stick together as a community. But I completely agree with Miles that our recommendations must be lined up with the CDC.
Michael Terrell?
No, sorry, I think I was doing what we're not supposed to do and touching my face.
Nina? Nina?
I have right here the main CDC guidelines. I can read directly from the website if that will help the matter.
Are they different from what Judy said in terms of the 10 people and 6 foot issue?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay, travel advisories updated March 28th, 2020 at 10:30 a.m. Level 3, avoid all non-essential travel. Most foreign nationals who have been in one of these countries during the previous 14 days will not be allowed to enter. China, Iran, most European countries, United Kingdom, and Ireland. Also, avoid all non-essential travel global. Stay home for 14 days from the time you left an area with widespread ongoing community spread, level 3 countries, and practice social distancing. That's exactly what it says on their website.
Right, and that was
I don't know how you want to
updated.
interpret that.
And that was updated yesterday.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, they do their updates at usually 10:30 or 11 o'clock.
It was updated yesterday yeah, it's in the news.
Vicky?
I mean, I think that's.
Sorry. Go ahead,
what
Michael.
more can we do? What more can we do?
Vicky?
Yeah, I think that covers it. And the question with those last things, as far as, you know, sheltering in and self-quarantining, the question is it enforceable? And I don't think that anybody is at that point of enforcing that. These are educated suggestions as for appropriate behavior.
Mike Lannon?
I hear us talking about two different things. The health advisories, which I think we're all in agreement that we're not qualified to do that, and to do that would put ourselves potentially in a position where we might divide the community if we start doing things outside of what the state and federal authorities and World Health Organizations and everyone else is saying. But then we also have the local issues that affect us because of the way Bayside is. And those are the ones that I think we should be discussing a little bit about what we're going to do in the future.
I also want to note that it feels like there's going to be, whatever comes out of this meeting, there needs to be some kind of communication to the residents. And that can be through Dan. It can also be a sheet of paper that's slapped inside everyone's front door. And it's very important to note, I agree, that this is a snapshot in time, and what we agreed to, we may not be able to say much more than we're following what the state and the CDC says, because that is going to probably change over time. Lisa?
I will say that what is enforceable, what I have seen in New York is any venue that has, like, if they say don't do over 10 people, they fine every place $2,000 for every event that they have. So that is enforceable. So we need to be very clear with the community center that if they have already said, which I didn't know, if they have already said 10 people, there is nothing to be held, because I will tell you, in New York State, people are being fined, just to be clear.
Vicky?
There are desperate times in New York right now. I will say I have gotten information from the golf club. They feel that they can go ahead and open April 15th and have appropriate social distancing. That's the last thing I heard. I haven't heard anything since. But as we've all said, this changes from week to week. And, you know, golf is certainly different than a bunch of kayaks down on the beach. So,
Mike, I have a question for you. Do you think, is it sufficient for the overseers to express to residents, current and incoming, that there are certain guidelines out there about distancing and numbers of groups, and that people should just use their common sense and leave it at that? Or do you think we need to get more specific and say, we're closing off the wharf, we're doing X, Y, and Z?
I think it's a combination of the two. If we use the golf club, for example, I'm a member there, and I have been receiving the emails from that, and they think they have everything figured out for social distancing, except for how do you take the flag out and put it back in without everybody touching it. So they're trying to come up with a policy for that so that people can understand what that should be. And that's the kind of thing that I think we need to do, for example, with the kayaks down at the water, or you know, the playground and so on. We just have to have our recommended policy. We can't enforce it or anything, but it should sort of be that. Maybe we're not there yet, so maybe this is just the start of the discussion, but that's
okay. The order is going to go Judy, Vicky, Michael, Lisa. No Michael. Judy, Vicky.
Well, I was going to suggest that because of the mutability of all of this, and that the safety committee should be authorized to do the appropriate postings and reminders as to the public spaces, as to the public spaces that they would recommend. I think that it is enough for us to say that it's not just that that the CDC of Maine has recommended these things, they've told us these things. But the way the Bayside needs to put those in place in the public areas is a matter of a posting. Sorry, dock closed. Sorry, playground closed. Whatever the safety committee, which is more nimble in getting a meeting together than we can be, I would trust them to do that.
Vicky?
I was wondering if it would be appropriate. We do have some community people here, which I really think is lovely. And just to spend just 2 or 3 minutes, if anybody wants to weigh in on what their thoughts are.
Anybody unmutes will recognize you.
No, nobody wants to weigh in. Oh, y'all, okay. They're not there. They're
Lisa?
Wendy.
Yeah.
Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
So one of the things I haven't heard you talk about, which I was going to ask in the comments, is I think there's a big concern about protecting the NVC employees. So I know that we just have a small set of employees, but from a sustainability of the core functions within the community, that if any of our employees get exposed to this, then it becomes a big problem. Given that people are working remotely, it's probably limited, but we do have people such as Bill who are out in the community, especially when it comes to turning water on and having interactions with people. And so I think that that's something that we really need to sort of figure out and make sure that we're putting policies in place that really protect our employees.
Thank you. Actually, Lisa had her hand up earlier. And John Hoy, go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, thanks. I think you're doing a great job. My opinion, just as an outsider, as a resident, is that it would be helpful to have a fairly detailed protocol for Bayside, and it seems like that's where your discussion is going. For example, handrails and use of common spaces. but it will take some lengthy chat. I don't think it's something that can happen very quickly. And I think, you know, there are a couple of models that might be helpful too. Here in Freeport, there's a group called the Freeport Friends, and I think groups like that are forming all over the place. And Bayside, I think, you know, having an ongoing community presence, another, you know, just an informal or formal committee that deals with these questions on a regular basis. I mean, the kayak question, I think, is a good one. What are the, you know, the actual scientific, you know, ramifications of having a kayak in a shared space? Thanks.
Thank you. Deanna? Deanna? Unmute. Unmute.
So I was just thinking that because it's changing so rapidly.
Closer to this, Deanna, a little closer so we can hear you.
Okay. So I was just thinking that because this is changing so rapidly, it's hard to know exactly what Bayside will
I still can't hear it.
choose to do 6 weeks from now, right? It's impossible to know because I think that everything could be fine and signs could be put up on the beaches or on the dock, and some people would adhere to those suggestions or not. I think it's human nature to want to go out when it's beautiful outside, and some people feel like they're immune to anything, and there are a bunch of kids. It's impossible to know, but based on what's going on here in DC, people, even though there are these suggestions, a lot of people don't respect the suggestions. Also, I think in Bayside, because people live really cheek to jowl there, I mean, I'm 6 feet apart on my porch from my neighbor. That's it. So all it's going to take is for one person to get sick, right? And then it's all going to really fall apart from there. So I think, you know, and maybe this might be my nature, but to think worst case scenario and back up from there. In other words, what would happen in Bayside in June or July if people started getting sick? And how would Bayside respond to that?
Michael Terrell?
Yeah, and I think that one of the things we haven't talked about that would obviously come into this at some point is the whole issue of the in and out of renters. You know, it's not just the stable community of those of us who are there, but, you know, the transient nature of renters. But again, I think I'm hearing two things, two kind of categories. What can be done now, and what is sort of maybe start to anticipate that may or may not happen. And that's, you know, that could be in some capacity, safety or some special committee, who knows? The issue is we don't know where this is all going to go. We know where we are now. And we know where some regions of the country are more so than others. And that also that isn't just about what's a hotspot or what's out of control, but it's also about where compliance is, you know, and isn't. Because, you know, even in New York, they're still wrestling with compliance, although most people get it. But the comment about DC and certainly other places have, you know, lots of compliance issues. They're still on the beaches in Miami, for God's sake.
Mike Lannon?
Yeah, I think we're talking about what should we do now, and then what do we need to be looking for in the future. I guess, John, when is the next overseers meeting? And I guess, is that the right amount of time for us to revisit this again? Or do we need to do something, come up with something like the Friends of whatever it was, Freeport type of thing that then reports to the overseers, and we just have a quick conference call, and then Nina or somebody posts something just to stay on top of it? Is that a way to do it? Or, you know, what are we doing between now and then, I guess is the question.
Our next overseers meeting is scheduled for May 10th. I personally don't think we need a Friends of Bayside. I think that the safety committee, and I'm pointing down towards where Michael is on my
If you
screen,
go like this, I'm not sure.
essentially fulfills that function. We have a committee that, among other, that is tasked with paying attention to the safety issues, and this is what we're talking about here. So I kind of think we're there already. Vicky?
I don't know about that.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Michael, finish. Michael,
You don't know
finish.
about that.
Well, I think that, that's fine, but, I point, and I'm not afraid of this, by the way, taking it on, but I just noticed that when we did waterfront safety, we had a special committee because it needed a special focus. So, and I don't know what went into that. I mean, I remember the discussions around that.
Yeah.
But I also think that before we get to a field, there's a couple things I think we need to do before we run out of time or participation here in this meeting, which is to decide if we're going to put something out at the end of this meeting. So I think I just, before we boil oceans, can we get, so what are we doing? Because this discussion, and by the way, the overseers isn't really set up, as we know, to have a discussion where it just sort of goes in every direction, because we could be here, we could all miss church. But so I just want to keep on top of what are we doing now in terms of what are we putting out. I would think that we could put out something that supports the CDC and amplifies it, and just sort of gently reminds people that we're in the same boat here around all that.
Okay. Vicky, then Jeffrey.
Okay, first I want to thank the community people who spoke. I find that enlightening. I wish we had more time, and you people that are living in other cities, especially where the concentration of people is much greater, I think is very important, because I, as a medical professional living through this, really believe that the same thing is going to happen here at some point and to some degree. I think first, make sure our personnel are safe and have the appropriate equipment that they have. And I'm hoping, I'm certain, hopefully Bill has considered that and has what he needs as people come in. I also think for Michael Terrell, instead of dropping this on you, I think the issues about what to do about the boats and the yacht club and the kayaks can very easily be reassigned to the waterfront committee to decide how they want to handle that. Because they are heavy into waterfront, but there's a way to divide some of this up. I would be willing to look at something like the community hall to say, what do we need here now? And what might we need here later? What do we need to look at to bring to the next meeting? 6 weeks is a long time. This thing changes from week to week. I would consider another meeting specifically for this, for the overseers at an earlier date. I'm done.
Well, so that's one of the things I was going to pose as a question is, do we need to have an April meeting to discuss this rapidly changing situation? As for Michael Terrell's comment of, can we think about what we'd like to say coming out of this meeting? Would one approach be to encourage people to follow the state of Maine guidelines? I don't think we can be in a position where we change our posting every day when the state of Maine changes its guidelines. But as a body, should not our recommendation be to follow the guidance of the state of Maine?
Judy?
I think that's exactly what we should do, with an additional sentence that says we are considering imposing or developing guidelines for use of the parks and the common areas, and please stay tuned. I think we need to let our citizens know that we're thinking about these things, but the baseline should be, coming out of this meeting, the CDC guidelines for the state of Maine are to be adhered with.
I agree.
Lisa, I see you writing down there as if you're as the communications committee.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add, do we want something on there? We've all talked about this parking thing, but something of everyone needs to be cognizant that emergency vehicles might have to go through our community here. So be cognizant of where you're parking and leaving it at that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Good point. Jeffrey, you had something you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to add, I agree with Judy's comment in terms of what to add to follow the main CDC. I like Judy's additions.
So it feels like there's a communications that's going to have three components to it. One's going to say follow, we are following and recommend that you follow the main CDC guidelines with a link to where that is. It's a constant link on the main CDC site. Number two is, additionally, we are looking at what might be some specific gathering points or issues to be addressed, however you want to say that, in Bayside, and that's a dynamic process, or however we want to express that. And number three, correct, Lisa, that don't forget that emergency vehicles may need to move up and down our thoroughfares, so just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
Is that enough for you to go with,
That's good.
Lisa? Okay. Mike Lannon?
Yeah, I think that number 4 is what Wendy brought up with respect to our employees. And I'd like to hear what Billy Page's thoughts and concerns are at this point. I know he's going to do his report shortly, but I think I'd like to hear what his thoughts are on this particular topic.
Great. Bill?
You double clicked.
Go ahead. No, Bill, you need to unmute.
I'm having issues here with staying online.
Okay.
I believe as it is right now, you've made the office work. Everybody's distance. As being an employee for the utilities, we have put into place our normal procedures with extra precautions on top of that. So we are following our normal protocol for situations like this, especially in the wastewater side and especially on the water side. The one thing that I've had in the back of my mind is, and it hasn't been brought up to the utilities situation, is entering people's houses with people there. That's one issue personally that I need to bring up to the utilities to get answers on if they're going to establish, because as you all know, it's like the phone company and the power company, your UPS, your FedEx and all that, they're keeping their distance and they're not allowed to come into your house and do service. I'm just wondering whether the utilities is going to also put that in place for like me installing some water meters in people's houses. Other than that, I'm considered an essential employee by the CDC because of the sewer and the water, and also that I am on a fire department, so I am aware of everything, but I am an essential employee, so I have to be out around doing certain things, and I have to watch myself, and I think we're doing a good job at this point for myself, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you would want to communicate though to the residents that specifically that you've noticed was I think my original question?
Everything is on the village agent side that I've noticed. Most people are going by what the CDC says. Stay in place. Keep your social distance. It seems like everybody's doing that, with the exception of a few at times. Other than that, it seems like Bayside's been relatively quiet for the amount of people that are here right now. So everybody seems to be doing a good job, with the exception of a few at times.
Judy?
Bill, with regard to installing meters, there are some that you need to go into the homes in order to do that. Can you offline provide Lisa or me a list, or someone a list of those 20 homes, 15 homes, so that we can communicate directly with the homeowners as to what they will need to do to make you safe in that home? Like Clorox wipes and things like that?
I believe we can do that. I know Dick McElhaney and myself, on Friday, we had a discussion on some of that with the upcoming turning of people's water on. We worked on a little bit, and there was a couple things that we talked about, and I really don't want to put it out there yet until the utilities have had a chance to weigh in on what that was. But that could be a way to go too, Judy. I mean, it's a thought.
Because it seems to me that most of your meters are out external, your summer meters are external.
A lot of them, but I have quite a few that are inside too.
And I think if any single one of those neighbors and friends realizes that just walking in the building exposes you, that they would be cooperative.
Right.
We let them know. Many people, so many of us, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
I also want to let y'all know that I spoke with Fernie on Friday about his level of comfort and if he felt as though we were protecting him on the on all these recommendations, and he was very happy. Of course, he doesn't interact with many of us at 4:30 in the morning, but I did reach out to him, and I also spoke to Dick, and he said that he and Billy are maintaining their safe social distances and proceeding well, and felt that the order that we had put in place in terms of closing the office was a good thing.
Lisa?
Bill, I don't know. This just shows my ignorance about putting in the water meters. You can only do that after their water is turned on. Is that correct?
No, it's the weather.
The weather.
The,
Okay.
the
So it's not
nighttime
like,
temperature is freezing.
Right.
so it's not like you could put the water meter on. Geez, I just don't like the idea of you going into anyone's house, honestly, even with Clorox wipes. It's not something you can do before they get here then, I'm taking?
Well, a lot of them, yes. We can do that. But I have to work with their plumber, or I have to work with their caretaker, or somebody I have to work with, because somebody physically has to be there when this water is turned on to that person's house to let me in.
Okay, so I just wonder if, to kind of piggyback what Judy's saying, if we can get a list of people, right? And if you could get into their house before those families are here, even if you did it with a plumber or someone else, that's still a lot safer than having you come when the family's already here. I don't know how doable that is, but I just pose that. It could be a logistics problem, but it would just be a lot safer.
Right.
Michael Terrell?
Just a question about process. Where are we right now in terms of, a question and then a suggestion. Are we still crafting what we're putting out? I assume that's the case. And I wonder, can we focus that, number one? Number two, I wonder if a solution could be, in terms of moving forward, that we look at an ad hoc committee that is composed of whoever wants to be on it, of course, but at minimum, safety, waterfront safety, infrastructure. I mean, I just feel like there's a whole bunch of things here that if you assign it to one committee, it's just going to raise a whole bunch of things. We can cover pulling together. Obviously, people are welcome to join, or we could assign who's going to be on it. But I just think at minimum, we know that there's impact on the waterfront. There's impact, obviously, safety. If we go into this and it's still a serious situation, or as serious as it is as it's developing, we're going to have impact on what we expect of additional seasonal employees, and they are, as I see it, safety. We're going to have impact on lifeguards, the whole bit. So we might have to start to step up what we do around it, but we, in terms of planning, some of that may not happen, of course, but so maybe we have an ad hoc situation going on here in terms of the committee. But I'm mostly interested in where are we with process now? Because we could talk about this for the rest of the morning, and what are we moving towards?
So Lisa is crafting a document that will go out to Dan, to the two renting agencies, Lisa. Why don't you talk?
Yeah, so I'll craft something and I can even send it back to you guys if you want to see it before I send it out. I do question whether there should be a fourth part of if you need your water meter, you know, then you need to let us know who's going to have a water meter in their home, because we would like to be able to install it before you get here. I don't know, just throwing
Judy?
it out.
Well, I think as to the water meter piece, that we don't want to get too many confused messages. There's already been a note that's been put out on Dan's website encouraging people not to think that they can come before April 20th, to help us line up who can come by putting an email out saying don't install meter date, and encouraging people to say as late as possible. The Utilities Committee with Bill and Dick will help us refine that based on the CDC notices. But for now, I think that we would be confusing people by putting out too many messages with too many voices.
Okay, so this message will be the main, we are following main CDC recommendations. Number 2, we're developing guidelines for community areas. And number 3, please be cognizant for your parking for emergency vehicles that might need to come in and out. And I'll leave it at that. And then the rest of our guidelines or recommendations, we will have to figure out later, and that will be in separate communication. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. And Lisa, for my part, I don't need to have you send this around to the group. You're a good writer. You take care of it. You know, if you want to confer with me, we can talk about the places it should go to. But Dan's website is right off the top is a place where it's going to have the most impact
obviously.
right away.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think, Michael, that you're correct in terms of creating an ad hoc group. And I didn't mean to drop it on safety unnecessarily. You're right. So do we want to create that group right now, or do we want people to gather online after this call, or figure out some way to do that? Mike Lanham.
I think we want to invite the public to be involved in this as well. So maybe it's something that we should have Dan Webster send out, or and then we should have maybe a couple of overseers sort of included on it. Does that make sense?
Michael, Jeffrey?
I think whenever we meet in our subcommittees, we always invite the public to participate. I do think I like Michael Terrell's idea of having some sort of committee that represents safety, waterfront safety, infrastructure, whomever else, that it could start having a dialogue around this. And then I believe we should go ahead and schedule an April overseers meeting, if only just to continue this dialogue.
The issue with April, part of the reason that April's a challenging month with Easter and all that. Obviously, I don't know what people's schedules are like.
None of us are going to be in church on Easter Sunday because.
Oh,
bummer. I want to listen to the live stream.
Yeah.
So April 19th would be the week after Easter. I would be available by in person or otherwise.
Other overseers? How about this? Could people raise their hand if they are available on April 19th?
Well, hang on.
1, 2, 3, 4. Miles had his hand up.
Hold on. April 19th?
Lisa has her hand up. Yeah. Jeffrey has his hand up.
Yeah, I can do it.
So everybody can. And I didn't ask if that was going to be live or not. I'm assuming you were saying you could do it online. We could make it online no matter what. But let's mark that down then as April 19th as a time when we regather and have a full overseers meeting, but that we really would try to focus on this. Now, are there questions? Jeffrey, are you asking something?
I'm not asking something. I'm just suggesting again that we have to figure out the special task force that
Right.
is going to give us something to talk about on the 19th.
Correct. Michael?
Yeah, and again, I go back to, obviously, community involvement's important, but I don't think we should go into the 19th as a board to just start this discussion again. I think we should have a group that's appointed now to narrow to a set of topics, or to corral all of the what ifs and start looking at a process and an advocacy, and I'll bring that to a discussion and invite community involvement.
Jeffrey?
So I would recommend that Michael Terrell chair that task force, and I will be on the task force. Mike Lannon will be on the task force representing infrastructure, and then we can add anyone else that we think is appropriate for whatever reason. But I do think a committee needs a leader, and having been on the safety committee, Michael's very good at it.
Judy?
I would think that Lisa, sorry to volunteer your time, Lisa, but I think communications is whatever you'll be talking about, so she should be on it.
Absolutely.
Bill Page should be an instrument, a very important piece of that. I do agree with, that the public should be invited, but I don't think that the management of the committee should be broadened beyond the people we've just named, because we want to assure that it's the overseers driving this decision. So there's accountability.
Mike Lannon?
But isn't this committee just going to come back to the overseers and make recommendations? So it seems like anybody on this call, for example, could be invited if they wanted to be a part of it.
I agree. My point is that it should be the overseer members of this committee are managing this committee.
Oh, yes.
So that there's no passing the buck in terms of accountability. We're responsible collectively for developing this policy.
Okay.
So I just don't want it to get broader and say, well, that was John Smith, it was all his fault.
I know, but we're always trying to incorporate as many people in the process as we can. So that
I think the distinction is, Judy, and when I hear you say managing I think there are committee members and then there's community input. I think that's where you're going. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So I'm hearing right now that this committee, which is going to be called, I'll fill that in, is comprised of,
Pandemic Crisis Control Committee.
there we go, if they're willing, Michael Terrell, Jeffrey Wilt, Mike Lannon, Lisa Fryer, and Bill. Is anyone not able to do that? And that Michael Terrell is the chair of this committee. And Michael, I will leave it up to you to corral these folks as best you can and determine what you want us to be talking about on the 19th. And by the way, it may well be, today is the 28th or 29th. It may well be, Michael, that your committee says, there's something that we need to do 8 days from now. And that you should convey that back to me so that we can convey it out to the overseers if that's the case.
Can I get the names again? Me,
Jeffrey, Lisa, Mike, and Bill.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Mike Lannon?
I just had one timely discussion item, and that has to do with the seawall contract. And I was going to suggest, if you agree, John, that I just talk to them about extending the deadline so that we can talk about what exactly we want in that contract, because Gordon brought up an interesting thought, which is if they're talking about if we have to go into sort of longer term quarantines, that they might allow construction activities to take place. And he said, if there's some reason we're going to lose part of the season, there might be the time to have the seawall built. So it seems like we could delay the contract to kind of see if that needs to be discussed or not.
I have no problem with your contacting them and get back to me and Steve and let us know.
Yeah, that's great. That's all I was going to. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else right now on this topic? Thank you all for staying with us so diligently. Bill, report of the village agent. Bill?
done, yeah. So are you going to be the person to contact the town administrator on her letter to tell her what the village decided? Jeff, I mean, John.
I know it says Helen Pelletier there, but
Yeah.
this is the letter from Barbara regarding what we've just been talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get back to Barbara and let her, essentially, Lisa, send me what you're proposing, and I will convey a form of that back to Barbara Ashe too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so we got that straight now.
Yes.
Now, the thing with regards to the issue that we had from the last meeting on the seawall, I want to clarify this now that everybody is here. All that I asked for was I asked the overseers if I had permission to set in on the pre-construction set down that you have whenever you have a pre-construction. So I could work with the people who won the bid to do the seawall, to work with them so that I could get the floats off the dock, up the boat ramp, placed in the park out of the way of the seawall construction process. That's what I asked. I know that some of the wording, and I brought it up at the beginning of the meeting, that I see in the draft minutes did not reflect it that way. It came across in a different way. So I understand that the chairman of the infrastructure committee was not there when that was done. And I just wanted to clarify that for him, that that's what I asked. I did not ask to be in charge of doing the marvelous job that he's been doing, putting this seawall project together. I would really love him to continue to do that. I was not asking to interfere with him. All I was asking as village agent, that I am the one that is responsible for the floats. And I was asking for clarification because of what I was hearing previous to me asking that question. And I just wanted clarification. It's either the village agent is going to handle taking the floats out and working with the new contractors to get them out of the way for them and put them in a place that's suitable, or somebody else is going to do that job. The situation that keeps happening as village agent is there gets to be some confusion with these committees and their responsibilities, and the responsibilities that you, the overseers, give to your village agent to get things done. There has been issues and it has caused problems. And at times, I just sit back and let you guys do what you do. You're all intending to do the right thing, but the chain of command or the chain of events that has been set up by the overseers seems to get out of whack at times. And that, to me, comes back to me as it's personality issues, it's all kinds of things. And that's not what I want as village agent. I'm here working for you overseers. You direct me what to do, and that's what I do. But when committees seem to be stepping out of their bounds and trying to say things and do things, it gets very confusing at my end, and I have no recourse other than to bring it up at a meeting to get clarification. I just wanted that to be put out there. And as that, I will move on. So what with some of the things that's going on to get prepared for the springtime like we normally do, the virus, of course, has got everything. So it's hard to deal with certain ones, and dealing with some of the vendors and things. I'm having people ask certain questions. We are still proceeding as best we can on, hopefully the village will be opening up this summer. So what I would like, I have a question here. The signs, the placement of the speed signs are on hold at this time. I asked the road commissioner about placement on their streets, and he said that he was having a meeting that night and he would bring it up to the select board. The select board told him to come back to me and tell them that I needed to come down with some more information and I needed to talk to them directly at their meeting to get better clarification where we were going to place these signs and what they actually looked like. I says, okay, I will. But now all of a sudden, all the town offices are closed. So we're going to have to wait on that until I can get some type of verification for placement of the 2 speed signs that we talked about at last meeting. The other thing is we purchased gravel out of last year's budget when we pre-purchased because we had a little extra money left over. My recommendation for that gravel that I'm asking now is for the amount of gravel that we're going to get, I would like to proceed with the upgrade on Griffin Street and to use that gravel on Griffin Street to upgrade that street this spring, if at all possible through this virus, stuff.
Judy?
Bill, do you have any plans for Pleasant Lane?
Pleasant Lane. The only thing we've talked over and over, I've talked with Michael Lannon, we've discussed it, try to figure out that water issue on Pleasant Lane. It's still a work in progress because the contractors that I brought in there to look at it, they're scratching their head trying to figure out a water, how to address that water thing. There is some things that might help with some of the water, but that's going to have to be worked out also with the town because it's to do with their upper street. There's possibly put in a catch basin and cross it over to the other one. So that's a work in progress. We just can't.
So in the context of placing gravel to at least protect the water pipe that is routinely exposed by virtue of the gully wash that goes down there, maybe the gravel could, I know that's a temporary fix, but there's a exposure for an infrastructure piece there. Maybe Michael has some ideas on that.
Well, that part will be taken care of in the general road maintenance budget when I do it in the spring.
Okay.
We'll haul some gravel in and grade it out like we do with some of the streets out of the regular budget, but there's no solution come up yet with that street.
Michael Terrell?
Just a question back to the placement of the signs, Bill, and the process there. Do you know what's a best guess at timing on your process and then their approval?
Well, the public, as far as I know, the public can't go to a public meeting. So, I can't go to their meeting to discuss this.
I guess I'm asking for clarification. You've mentioned that they are requesting something from you and you have to pull that together and get it to them.
Yes.
And then they act from there. So do you have an idea on, does that delay significantly what we're talking about for the season, or are we still within a window?
It depends on the virus. Their office is closed just like ours.
But aren't you involved in a meeting process with them? Isn't it at a meeting?
I can't, their office is closed. The only way that they're not having a meeting.
Okay.
I'm public. I can't go to a meeting.
Okay.
You know, it's like their office is closed, just like our office is closed. I've been trying to call the town administrator. She will not answer. They're not open. They're just like us. We're on hold.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Vicky?
Are you talking about the town of Northport?
Yes.
I do believe they have some sort of, you know, just like we do, people are in there at particular times, but I'll double check that. I'm sure you've tried, but I do think somebody stops by to pick up the mail.
But the relevant issue seems to be that if the selectmen aren't allowing the public to attend meetings, then Bill has no way to present to them as they have asked him to. So that has to get resolved at the Northport end. Bill, keep going. Sorry.
So back to the gravel. Can I get approval to use that gravel that we pre-purchased to work on trying to bring Griffin Street up to par?
I don't think you need a vote on that.
Well, it was that extra gravel, so that doesn't really come under that. I didn't think that it come under the regular road maintenance. Where we're trying to bring a street, we've been in the process of trying to bring the dirt streets up to where they should be. And I just didn't want to go and start doing that process on that street if you guys didn't want that extra gravel to go there. Or do you want to just leave it to me to take care of?
I think so.
Okay, that's all I'm asking, just for clarification. Is there any issues with that with the infrastructure committee chairman?
Nope.
Okay. Other than that, as I say, everything is kind of on hold. You know, the lights for the community halls on hold. Just because businesses are closed down and people aren't answering questions, and so we're just moving forward, and I guess that's it.
Thank you very much.
Questions for me, anyone, on any of the board, on any of the meetings?
Vicky?
No, I just want to reiterate, as far as lines of communication, I think, Bill, you and I are pretty straight on that. We've got a couple of things that are outside jobs, the cleaning up Marathu and the treating of the trees. I would just like to know when these guys come to town, and I've made it very clear to them, I hope, that they need to communicate to you also when they plan on coming to town, and you and I will communicate with each other. I just want to know that when this work gets started. And also, I want to confirm that both Tree Works and Harley Landscaping have filled out their paperwork so they can work in the village.
Okay, so yes, with the conversation, with the emails you and I had the other day, I contacted the tree company that you had requested to do the brown-tailed moss. Contacted him. Within an hour, they had submitted all the paperwork required for us to proceed. So I have that in hand. The Harley company for the landscape part, he is in the process of trying to get all his paperwork. I did receive some of his paperwork today in the mail that I got to look over, but I'm still waiting for, I think, another paper for him. So I believe I will have that in hand, and as soon as I have his in hand, I will give you a go-ahead that we have all the paperwork there. Both companies was very confused in that process because I guess between you and Lisa and seemed like somebody else, they said they were confused on, now you're throwing this other guy into the mix. So that's all been straightened out, so they understand it too. So we're good to go with them two companies.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I apologize because I forgot something. This paperwork is really important. And there was no reason for Harley to be so confused, but yes, I think I clarified things for him also. It was Harley that was overthinking. The other is there was a request from the fundraising committee to investigate clipping in Auditorium Park. And so there's a guy that will climb trees, which is much less expensive than bringing in a 90-foot truck that, you know, has a 90-foot ladder on it. And he gave us a quote for clipping 4 trees that he could climb in Auditorium Park. And he could climb them. There are several trees there that are close to wires, and he wouldn't climb those trees. And the quote was for, I think, something like $1,020. And so if it's appropriate at this time, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve that. His name is Ben Stevens, and it's Arboral North Tree Service. And so I'd like to make a motion that we have him clip the nests from the 4 trees in Auditorium Park for $1,020. Anybody want to second that?
Is there a second to that?
$1,040. $1,040.
I'll second it.
Lisa has seconded. Discussion? Mike Lannon? Mike Lannon?
Is this coming out of the donation budget? Is that what this is coming from?
Yes. Yes, right now, any work that's being done for the brown-tailed moth is all from fundraising.
Okay, just one. Thank you.
Yep, tell your friends and loved ones they can continue to donate.
So there was 2,000 and some left in there, according to Steve, 2,417, and you're saying pull 1,040 out of that. Steve Kaz, did you have your hand up?
I did. Yeah, you have plenty of money if that's where you want to pull it from.
Judy?
Just want to, so that there's been $9,000 raised for brown-tailed moth. We've spent 7. Now we're going to spend another 1. So as long as that 9,000 for brown-tailed moth doesn't include the money that was dedicated to Merrithew Square plantings, then we're fine. And I support the motion.
Yeah, that money is strictly donations. It's my understanding, and I'm really comfortable with that. I'm sure none of that is from there. And well, I was going to say something else, but I forgot. Anyway, okay.
Vicki, have we worked with this guy before? There's the village?
We have not worked with any of these people before, but Ben Stevens, one of our residents, had been talking a lot to Ben Stevens. He had a different way of treating the trees, and there's 2 ways to do these clippings: climbers and those guys that come in with the equipment. So no, we have not worked with either of them.
Do we need any special bonding or insurance because he's a guy climbing up into a tall tree?
I'm assuming he has that. He's got an established business, and I remembered it because he's the only one I mentioned to him that once this is accepted, he's going to need to fill out paperwork. And with some of these smaller independent guys, and he is a smaller independent guy, I don't know what kind of a crew he works with. There's always the chance that they don't have the appropriate workman's compensation. So that would stop his clipping of the trees in Auditorium Park. I just remembered what I was thinking of before. Auditorium Park is very populated. And again, if you talk about density with the moss, and Diana Eastie has been instrumental in pursuing the fundraising because she got extremely ill last year, and because of the moth. And so I think in light of the fact that it's a very active area, if we have the opportunity to cut down on it in a way that's financially feasible, it's worth the effort.
Just a moment, Judy. Lisa, did you have your hand up earlier?
No, sorry.
Then Judy?
So would you entertain a clarification or modification of your motion that says that we would approve hiring this gentleman upon his presentation of his insurance certificates?
Sure. Do you want them all to present insurance? Is the insurance certificates part of the paperwork they fill out, Bill? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yeah, they have to fill out that paperwork. All of these are based on they can't work in the village without filling out this paperwork.
As long as that's clear.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think we need to amend the motion.
Mike Lannon?
Yeah, what is the insurance that's required for something like this, Bill?
Oh, I'm in the dock here, so I can't read it.
Oh, I didn't mean for him to have to go get stuff. I apologize.
General liability insurance of at least 100,000 bodily injury and property damage.
Can't hear you.
Can't read in the dock, so. General liability of at least 100, at least $1 million bodily injury and property damage. Combined single limit of 300,000 annual average limit. NVC officially for all insurance requirements.
Bill, you had me at $1 million for professional for
Exactly. I was the same.
And workers' comp insurance. And if they don't have workers' comp insurance, they have to do a predetermination form through the Workers' Compensation Board, and they get a certificate back saying that they're either denied or they're approved. And if they're approved, they get a certificate that they have to give to me, and it's good for 1 year period.
Got it. Thank you. Vicki?
And I will say that is generally where we lose the independent guys, which is, one of the reasons. It took me a long time to absorb that, but I have absorbed it. One of the reasons sometimes we have a hard time getting guys to come in and give us quotes for some of our smaller jobs. But we have it from the two primaries, and I've made it very clear to this gentleman that we need that paperwork also.
Michael?
Yeah, I have a separate question, not related to this, but about the pruning. So I'll wait.
So there's a motion on the floor to approve $1,040 to hire this guy, assuming all the paperwork happens. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, unanimous. Thank you. Michael, do you want to go to your question? Or?
Yeah, Vicki, I just had a question about, so the pruning for the other trees, like the clipping, what we're calling, in Ruggles, is that with a lift or is that climbing in the trees?
That is going to be done by Tree Works, and I'm pretty sure they don't need a lift, or he didn't. Hold on.
I think we need to clarify that because, access to the tree and the lift and where the lift is, I think is important, at least to me on that one tree. So it's not anything I need to. But we can talk offline. I'm not looking to hold this up.
Okay. Bill, I think we're still inside your report.
Yeah, I just had a question. Vicki needs to give me the company that's going to be climbing the tree that she just got approval for. She needs to provide me with the company's name and phone number or email address so I can make sure that they get the right proper paperwork to the village.
Of course, Bill. Thank you. I will make sure you get that. I'm not sure about your question, Michael Terrell. I will clarify that for you though this week, okay? It's not on all of the, he gave us quotes for clipping on all of the trees, but in none does he say whether or not they're using equipment. Obviously the higher trees they would. These might be more, much more manageable, so. Without.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's an issue to the extent it is, and I don't know how much of it is, but trees that are adjacent to people's property that we have a lift or people tromping around the property with plantings and all that, I'm concerned about that.
Absolutely. I totally,
And timing of the work. When is the work to happen? You know, I'd love to chat with you offline about that.
No, you know, as soon as I get a date when they're going to start, I will make sure all the overseers know that they're going to be in town doing this. I assume the treating of it is not going to take more than a day or two at most. And yeah, we'll keep you informed.
And do we
It's
have,
just new to all of us, yeah.
are they going to have, you know, is there going to be oversight? Like, is somebody going to be with them? You know, we've had work done in Ruggles Park, across the park before with a prior crew that were really difficult to deal with, and quite surly, in fact. You asked them anything, it was like, you know, you were not treated well. So I think, are we going to monitor them? Or, this stuff's important, especially if it's adjacent to people's property.
I can, I think at this point, the monitoring is as soon as we know that they're in town, and hopefully Bill will be around once we get the date that they're going to do this. He would be our village overseer in that issue. But you're bringing up good questions I hadn't really thought about, and I will make sure. And what I've told the two that we've already approved is that it's the reason I want to know when they're going to be there is so that Bill knows they're in town and he can be there in case there are any issues. So I hope that all comes through. It's a communication point issue at this point.
But I know in Auditorium Park, particularly, you've got lots of close-in cottages and the proximity to everything there. So I think we really do need to keep an eye on them. Monitor, you know.
What the treating is just a matter of drilling a little hole at the base of the tree and pouring in some fluid. The other.
Is this the conversation that you two are going to take offline, by the way?
Yeah, that is.
Thank you.
Well, as long as that's, you know, something that we all don't have a sense that we should be cognizant of as a group. I mean, I don't think we've talked about any of this in terms of the pruning and the access stuff. I mean, but I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. I'm just saying that when somebody comes in to prune trees, do we keep an eye on them and monitor them? That's what I'm asking.
And Bill says.
And these are the things that I was just talking about, that I believe that when anything's done in the village, that I'm the one that oversees them to make sure that a lot of these things don't happen, and I guide them. I believe that's what you've already given me that authority to do.
Okay.
Does that answer questions?
Yeah, thanks.
Mike, Glenn, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that I actually prefer the surly behavior of some of the people we hire because it really feels like the main experience.
Excellent. Anything else, Bill?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, report of the office manager. Nina, anything you want to talk to us about?
I'm in the process of, my business has always been able to view every document virtually. So I'm currently working on getting the documents into a system, and we are working on the access of that for overseers. And that way, in situations like this or any situation at all, if someone needs to refer to something, making things virtual, having access to it, all of that is completely possible within the system. So there shouldn't be a worry about any of that. And as we get to where more people have access, you will be given information on how to access that. Other than that, I go to the office and pick up documentation as needed, and am communicating with Steve and the accountant on getting things taken care of.
Thank you. You've made a note, of course, that we're going to be meeting on April 19th. So you'll set up a similar Zoom for us then. Vicki?
Nina, I dropped some information off for you about the community hall. I wanted to make sure you got that.
Yes, I did. I have it right here.
Have you had a chance to look it over? I just wanted to make sure it was clear to you. It was just policies and procedures about the community hall. I couldn't find it on my computer. I think Amy may have retyped it onto the computer in the office. There is just one part here that I'd like to ask the overseers. It says individuals wishing to reserve the community hall should contact the office at such and such. The overseers will review these requests at their next regularly scheduled meeting and will approve, defer a decision to a later meeting or deny the request. In the event a decision is required between regularly scheduled overseers meetings, the chair of the facility committee, it's my understanding we don't really have a facility committee at this point, so I would like to give that piece, which doesn't happen, but to the president. I think, John, the president understands our issues and the questions we have about some of these things. I don't think it's an issue. I just want the paperwork to reflect that something appropriate. Does anybody have so I make a motion, we change the policy of the community hall that if we're not having a meeting to approve a request, the president of the overseers can do that and pass that information on to the overseers.
Second.
Second by Judy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, more power for me. I love it.
And Nina, I just want to be clear, if you have any questions, you can call me.
Yes.
It's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else, Nina?
No.
We still have some people online. Does anybody have any comments on agenda items? And if so, unmute yourself and it'll show up and I'll say go. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move forward. New and continuing business, I'll ignore. Yes, Steve.
Just a question. I'm sorry, I missed part of the meeting because the computer connection went down. So we've rescheduled an April 19th meeting. Does
Correct.
that mean you want to withdraw approval to pay invoices prior to the meeting?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Steve,
By the way, go ahead, Vicki.
that meeting was organized basically to keep up to date on the coronavirus and what our obligations there might be. That's sort of specifically, right? It's not like a full-fledged meeting, or is it?
Let's assume it's a full-fledged meeting, but it's going to be focusing on that. Michael, I would, just to follow up there, encourage the task force you put together to issue something back as soon as you think there is something to say, not to have to wait for that meeting to report back to the overseers.
Well, I guess to my thinking is that we'll meet. We will have a consensus around what we think are the priority issues now and perhaps in the future in some incremental way. And then we will come back for a discussion and maybe some proposals for the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if anybody here needs to meet in larger groups and Nina can be a resource, don't fail to call upon her in terms of helping to make that happen. And by the way, Michael, you have the most impressive backdrop of any of us. I have to say that wall of books is fascinating. I love it.
It's a,
anything else before we adjourn? Thank you all for staying. This has been 3 hours. Thank you so much for staying with us and staying. It's challenging on this technology. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved from Jeffrey, seconded by Michael Terrell. Let's do it. Thank you again.
okay, thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right.
How do I get out of here?
You
Is that in the
press
instructions?
leave meeting in the